more oxygen. This would not have been a problem in the original environment with greater air pressure and increased oxygen. We should remember also that reptiles are exothermic. Because they are cold-blooded, they would not have been able to survive the winters, not as easily. And did you know that seasons are never mentioned in the Bible until after Noah and his family get off the ark? Prior to that, in the original creation, it was perpetual springtime around planet Earth. Number 2, people hunted them for food, medicine, and because they were a nuisance. Now, let me ask you this. How many burgers do you think you could make out of a brachiosaurus? Right? Why wouldn't you hunt these things? Also, as the earth was populated and people settled into areas we would call villages, towns, cities, you got to chase the scary animals away. How many grizzly bears live in Denver, Colorado right now? I would imagine 0. How many you think lived there maybe 400 years ago? There's probably a lot in those areas. But as the population increases, all the scary animals move away further into the wilderness. Finally, answer number 3, why don't we have dinosaurs today? Are you sure there are no dinosaurs left today? Let's look at some of the stories through history about dinosaurs. And remember, what did we call dinosaurs? Dragons. Here is the story of Gilgamesh. He was a Sumerian king who supposedly slew a dragon. One Chinese legend, a famous Chinese man named Yu. After the Great Flood, Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. He built channels to drain the water off to the sea and helped make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven from the marshlands when Yu created the new farmlands. St. George was credited with killing a dragon in 275 AD. You can find a bunch of these in this book right here. It's called, it was written by Dwayne Gish, and I am sure you can buy it on Amazon. Marco Polo lived in China for 17 years, around 1271 AD, and reported that the emperor raised dragons to pull his chariots in parades. In the year 1611, the emperor appointed the post of royal dragon feeder. Books even tell of Chinese families raising dragons to use their blood for medicines and highly Polo was an explorer and a merchant who spent a great deal of time with his family in the Far East. And you can look this up. He wrote extensively about this. The city of Nurloc, France, was renamed in honor of the dragon that was slain there. It was described as being bigger than an ox and having long, sharp, pointed horns on its head. In May 13, 1572, Italian scientist Ulysses Aldrovandus obtained the dead body of a dragon and had it mounted for a museum display. Okay, now this next one is kind of a story, but it's here in America, and you can go to the museum and you can look at it. In 1908, in Glen Rose, Texas, a discovery was made in the Paluxy River. The Paluxy River is a very fast-moving river. In 1908, there was a flash flood, and they said the water was 28 feet above the flood stage. The whole area is made of layers of limestone. So if you get into the riverbed is essentially just flat, okay? It's just limestone right across there, and there are layers of it. In the 1930s, there was a team, I'm sorry, I skipped one part. During that flood, one of those layers of limestone on the bottom of the river ripped off and exposed a brand new fresh layer of limestone underneath that. In that layer, they found hundreds and hundreds of footprints. In the 1930s, there was a team that went down there to cut out the footprints and preserve them. They would sandbag off the river, pump out the water, and then cut out and remove the slabs of limestone with the footprints. They found hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur tracks running in every direction. Ronald T. Byrd, a field explorer, sorry, this is one of the most famous pictures. I don't know if you ever saw this little kid taking a bath in the dinosaur footprint. Anyway, that was in the Paluxy River. Ronald T. Byrd, a field explorer for the American Field Museum, reported 15 to 20-inch long, clearly defined human footprints with the dinosaur tracks. This is a cast of one of those footprints. And they are right next to those dinosaur tracks in the same layer of earth in the limestone in the Paluxy River. There are multiple museums down there where you can go and see these. They're not only, now that's impressive for two reasons. Number one, human footprints, we are told, are not supposed to be in the same layer of earth as dinosaur footprints, right? Aren't they supposed to be separated by like a quadrillion years? Okay, well, they weren't. They were contemporaneous. They lived together. And also, we find out that the footprints were giant. Okay, this here is the Likawala Swamp in the Congo. It is a big swamp. It is 55,000 square miles. To give you an idea of how big the swamp is, here is the United States in comparison to the Likawala Swamp. All of the states in red are 55,000 square miles. All the yellow states are smaller. So imagine a swamp the size of the state of Florida. You know what, scratch that. Imagine Florida. Okay? I mean, that's all it is anyhow. It's basically a swamp with some oranges. The swamp is said to be 80% unexplored. When explorers started their expeditions, stories started to come back of dinosaurs living in the jungle. This is an article from the New York Herald from 1910. Is a Brontosaurus roaming Africa's wilds? Here is an article from the Saturday Evening Post from 1948. After this expedition, they wrote a screenplay for the movie named Baby. It's about a baby Brachiosaurus found in the jungles of Africa. This gentleman, and in case you don't know which one of the three I'm talking about, the one with the ridiculous hat, his name is Dr. Roy Mackal. He was a biologist from the University of Chicago. He traveled over to the Congo several times in search of the creatures. The Likawala Swamp is a completely inhospitable environment. Travel through it is typically less than 1 mile per hour. And mosquitoes are said to land on you at a rate of several hundred per second. The creature they are searching for is called Makole Mbembe. The pygmies that inhabit the area speak of the creature as commonly as we talk about a cow or a dog. The Malambo plant is the preferred food of Makole Mbembe. You can read a book that Dr. Roy Mackal contributed to. He's there holding the Malambo plant. Here, Dr. Mackal is examining a footprint of Makole Mbembe. Although Dr. Mackal has been unable to get a photograph of this creature, Eugene Thomas, who is a missionary for 42 years, had 2 pygmies in his church in the Congo. They claimed to have killed one of these creatures. I've spoken to Eugene Thomas. I put his phone number on the screen. You can call him too. He was working as a translator while Roy Mackal was there. Dr. Mackal was interviewing one of the pygmies who said he had seen the creature. So he was interviewed by Dr. Roy Mackal, and he said that as a kid, his parents sent him into the jungle to hunt for dinner. So he took his blow darts and got in his canoe and went into the jungle and started paddling upstream, looking to hunt for monkeys. When he came to a point where the river opened up into a lake, he heard a large crash. He turned and he saw a sauropod run through the jungle and into the water. It had a large body, 4 legs, and a long neck and a tail. He said it was very fast, and it was under the water and gone in seconds. So Dr. Mackel, while he's interviewing this man, tries to trip him up and have him go back on his story, but this gentleman stuck to what he said. So Dr. Mackel opened up a National Geographic magazine and told him to please point to the animal he saw. So this gentleman is flipping through the magazine, and he's passing by pictures of animals he's never seen before in his life. And he finally gets to a picture of an Apatosaurus, and he starts jumping up and down and pointing at the page and yelling Macaulay and Bembe. Dr. Mackel started crying. He said all his life he was taught that these creatures died millions of years ago, and here, this is one of many fellas that said they have seen these creatures roaming around today. Now remember, this would not be the first animal discovered over there. The Okapi was discovered in the Congo. This animal was completely unknown to the civilized world until now. You got to remember, these jungles are not easy to get through. There are lots of parts where nobody goes. Missionary Cal Bombay and his wife told me they watched a creature like this for 15 minutes in Kenya. He said that the plates were bigger than the one pictured here. I included the phone numbers of the last 2 gentlemen in case you want to call them and get the story firsthand. In 1907, Lieutenant Colonel Percy Fawcett of the British Army was sent to mark the boundaries between Brazil and Peru. He was an officer in the Royal Engineers and was well known as a meticulous recorder of the facts. In the Benai swamps of Madre de Dios, Colonel P.H. Fawcett saw an animal he believed to be a Diplodocus. The Diplodocus story is confirmed by many of the tribes east of the Ucayali. Okay, these are Ica stones of Peru. They were originally discovered in 1966 by the head of the National University of Engineering in Lima, Peru. Here's one. He reported his findings to the museum in Ica City and scheduled more expeditions. Several thousand of these stones have been found. They are made of andesite and they have carvings. Many are not that interesting to me, but several of them have pictures of humans and dinosaurs together, like this one does. There are other carvings showing that man was very advanced a long time ago, even showing pictures of what we believe to be men performing surgery. Now, the main problem with these stones is that after they became popular, many locals started to fabricate them in order to sell them to the museum establishment. Unfortunately, because of this, they have all been written off as a forgery by many people, even the very first ones that were found. You can do your own homework on them. Okay, now we're going to go and look at the most famous of all the dinosaur sightings. We're going to go north to Scotland and take a look at the Loch Ness Monster. The Loch Ness is 24 miles long and it's about a mile wide, and it cuts through the northern western portion of Scotland. It was difficult to access and therefore complete wilderness until they cut into the mountain and installed a highway beside the loch. I believe they did that in 1933. The first year, there were 52 separate sightings by individuals or groups willing to go on record. Many competent people of above average intelligence have gone on record saying that they have seen the Loch Ness Monster. Here is Sir Peter Scott and his wife. He is a member of Parliament, and he is a believer in the Loch Ness Monster. As I said, many competent people have said, I wish I didn't see the thing, but I did. I don't know what to tell you. Arthur Grant, oh, sorry, we'll skip one there. Every account gives a description of a plesiosaur. Round body, long neck with a small round head and 4 swim fins and a short tail. Arthur Grant, a veterinary student, nearly ran into the Loch Ness Monster on his motorcycle. He said, I had a splendid view with my motorcycle. It had a long neck and large oval-shaped eyes on top of a small head. The tail would be from 5 to 6 feet long and very powerful. The curious thing about it was that the end was rounded off. It did not come to a point. The total length of the animal would be 15 to 20 feet. Knowing something of natural history, I can say I have never seen anything like it in my life. It looked like a hybrid. I jumped off my cycle and followed the animal, which had entered the loch with great speed. There is a huge splash. From the disturbance of the surface, it had evidently made way before I reached the shore. Here is the drawing that he made, and don't forget, he is a veterinary student. I think he can draw an animal. Alexander Campbell was the game warden for Loch Ness, and he said that he has seen the Loch Ness Monster 47 times. The Spicer family gave a report that they saw Nessie with a sheep in its mouth crossing the street. And in 1987, great effort was put into finding the Loch Ness Monster. They had Operation Deepscan. 24 boats fitted with Lawrence X-16 sonar units scanned the loch. After 3 days of searching, several large objects were located but could not be located again in the same area the following day. What they did find was that the loch is a maze of canyons and coves underwater that might even lead to large caverns. There's just no way of knowing. They even believe that the loch could have access to the ocean at both ends. Several underwater cameras were used with motion sensors. The loch has water that's very dark and muddy. You can barely see your hand right in front of your face. They actually had one fellow that made a miniature submarine and went down in there. I didn't include the pictures in his story just for the sake of time. But they left the cameras down there for several days. They were set up on motion sensors, and they didn't really get anything. And then the last day, right before they pulled them out, they got these 2 pictures. They believe that these pictures might be the swim fins of the Loch Ness Monster. So those are the pictures, and that's what a plesiosaur looks like. So you can be the judge. I really don't know. There are 7 other lakes in Scotland with monster sightings. There's Loch Lochy, Loch Triage, Loch Shiel. So Loch Ness is the most famous, but if you go over there, there's plenty of places to find a plesiosaur in the waters, apparently. Okay, don't worry, we got better pictures. If those pictures of the fins didn't do it, we're going to show you clear pictures here in a minute. In the South Pacific, off the east coast of New Zealand, a Japanese fishing crew pulled up this creature. It was 32 feet long and weighed 4,000 pounds. It was hauled up from 900 feet down, and after examining the creature, they threw it back. It was described as a plesiosaur. Now remember, these were commercial fishermen and a marine biologist. Here is the sketch drawn by the marine biologist. Now, I cannot read Japanese, so I don't know what he wrote. The Japanese government made the stamp to commemorate the event. Some people have argued that this was a decomposing, basking shark. I think it's easy to be a skeptic when you weren't there. It's amazing to me that an eyewitness account, a firsthand account, a testimony of commercial fishermen and a marine biologist isn't good enough anymore. You got to remember that the fishermen and the marine biologists knew what a basking shark was. They did not think it was a basking shark. They thought it was a plesiosaur. Here is a picture of a basking shark. Here's a picture of a much more dead basking shark. Okay, in comparison, you can see them. You can make up your own mind. Those pictures are not hard to find on the internet. In 1925, off the coast of Monterey, California, a dead sea serpent washed on shore. It was in all the papers. People came from miles around to view the sea monster. You can find the story in this book. These stories are literally everywhere. They just aren't widely publicized because they fly in the face of the evolutionary model. Here is the entire body of the sea serpent. Apparently, its neck was 20 feet long. You can see there's several guys standing in the background looking at this thing. Okay, in 1905, a sea serpent was reported off the coast of Brazil. Observers on the yacht, the Valhalla, cruising off the coast of Brazil, spotted a dorsal fin about 6 feet long and 2 feet high, then a small head on a neck about 7 or 8 feet long rose in front of the fin. The creature's color was mainly dark brown, turning white on the underside and the neck, and a good-sized body could be seen from the water. The observers were two British naturalists, Michael J. Nichol and E.G.B. Mead Waldo, fellows of the Zoological Society. In 1928, while on a ship off the coast of Greece, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle said, "I saw swimming parallel to the ship under the water a curious creature around 4 feet long with a long neck and large flippers. I believe, as did my wife, who also saw it, that it was a young plesiosaur. A Queensland correspondent wrote me that a young plesiosaur was taken in a net off Mudgee Beach, Australia. He sent me a sketch, which is like the one myself saw off the coast of Greece." If you don't know who Sir Arthur Conan Doyle is, he's the creator of Sherlock Holmes. A sea monster sighting in the Natural History of Norway by Bishop Erik Pontoppidan in 1755. That's the sketch of what he saw. This one is a rather, oh no, sorry, there's one more. Let's see. Okay, I think I skipped one. The previous one was Hans Edge, a missionary to Greenland. He drew this sketch of the sea monster that he saw off the coast of Greenland in 1734. This next one was in 1755 in the Natural History of Norway by Bishop Erik Pontoppidan. This one is a very famous one. You can read about this one anywhere. A 60-foot sea monster seen by Captain Peter McKay and the crew of the HMS Nautilus in August of 1848. The crew, they sat there and watched this thing swim by the ship as they were sailing along, and the crew begged the captain, "Please don't put this in the log. We are going to get laughed at." He said, "I don't care." He put it in the log anyway. You can look it up. It's not hard to find. In the 1850s, the whaling ship, the Monongahela, out of New Bedford, killed a 103-foot sea monster in the Pacific Ocean. The sailors said it had 2 blowholes, 4 swim fins, an alligator-like head, and 94 very sharp teeth. A passing ship stopped and saw the creature as the crew was cutting it up. They even bought some barrels of sea serpent oil before sailing home to tell the story. Now, the Monongahela, they were a whaling ship. They weren't in the market for one sea monster. They were going out as a commercial sailing vessel to get whales. So they went back out to sea to get whales, and unfortunately, they were never heard from again. Years later, the name board of the Monongahela was found on an Aleutian island. Now, what did all these stories of sea serpents have in common? All the ones in the ocean. You know the answer. You've heard me teach this before. Okay, they were all during the great age of sailing. How much noise does a sailboat make going through the water? No more than the waves crashing on themselves. Well, how much noise does a steam engine paddle ship or some diesel clunker make? Well, just like every other animal, they started to recognize where the shipping paths were, and they heard the boats, and all of a sudden, sea serpent sightings went away once sailboats went away. Okay, we're going to have a quick review of what we've gone over, and we're going to go home. And I use the term quick loosely. Okay, how did Adam live to be 930 years old? Okay, there was a different environment. There was increased air pressure and oxygen levels. Additionally, the harmful effects of the sun was filtered out. Now, keep in mind, all of that went away at the time of the flood. You got to understand, when the windows of heaven were opened up and the rains came down, okay, that's where some of the water came from. The remainder of the water, the vast majority of it, came from underneath the earth, in the water that was underneath the surface. But that canopy of ice or water, that idea, that's gone. It was gone at the time of the flood. And if you look at the ages of the people, they were all living to be 900 years old, including Noah. And then all of a sudden, after the flood, what happened to their age? It goes 600, 400, 200, boom, 100. Abraham was 120 years old. Nobody ever lived longer than that again. Okay, because everything had changed after that. The original creation was gone, and we lived in a new environment after the flood. Okay, number 2, why don't we have giant animals and people today? Okay, we do, they are just rare. If you're willing to search a little bit, you'll find these accounts everywhere. Okay, this is a dictionary from 1946. Under the word dragon, the first 2 words of definition number 1 are now rare. It wasn't that long ago that dragons were understood as normal. You say that's impossible. I'm going to show you exactly how it worked. Here's the biblical timeline. We've gone over it many times. 6,000 years ago, God created everything. 4,400 years ago, there was a flood, a worldwide flood in the days of Noah that destroyed everything. 2,000 years ago, the Messiah came and died on a cross in Jerusalem while the Jews celebrated Passover. And here we are today, waiting for the second coming. That's it. That's what the Bible gives us. So where do the dinosaurs fit in? Okay, so before I tell you where the dinosaurs fit in and how we've forgotten about them, let me ask you a question. How many of you know the names of your great-grandparents? Keep in mind, there are 8 of them. Okay, we got about 3 hands that went up. And that's about average. You get a couple people. Do you know why you don't know their names? Because they all died before you were born. Now, let this next point sink in. What that means is that you are exactly 3 generations away from being completely forgotten about. Here's how it goes. At this point, in the beginning, God created all the dinosaurs in a 6-day creation, just like every other animal. Okay? At this point, most of the dinosaurs died and were fossilized during the flood in the days of Noah. Fossilization is not easy to accomplish. You need rapid burial. You cannot have animals hanging out in the atmosphere. They're picked apart by predators. The elements get to them. They need to be buried rapidly for fossilization to take place. And almost every fossil that we find took place at this time. Not only that, all the oil and natural gas on Earth, what is it? Where does it come from? It comes from decomposing organic matter. You ever see a Hess station? Okay, what's the character that they have on the gas station? A dinosaur. Why is that? Because they know that that is what turned into the oil. That's where it came from. Decomposing organic matter. So the majority of the animals and dinosaurs that we find fossilized happen at this time. Keep in mind, you can still have fossilization take place today. I'm just making the point that the majority of it happened then, and most of the dinosaurs died at that point. Let's see. Then, the dinosaurs got off the ark 2 by 2. Some of them survived. A lot of them died due to the new atmosphere. They were hunted. They were a nuisance. And some point in the next 2,000 years, almost all the dinosaurs are extinct. Now, not but most of them. Now, here's how it works. In order to explain this, we're going to talk about three characters in your life: your grandparents. Your great-grandparents, when they were children, would see a dragon once in a while, but it was rare. Didn't happen very often. Maybe they wandered into the village to get some food, and they were often hunted down and killed because they were dangerous. Okay, that was your great-grandfather. Then your great-grandparents, they grow up and they have children, one of which is your grandfather. Now, he has never seen a dragon in person. But as a child, he often hears the stories secondhand from your great-grandfather about the dragons that once in a while would enter into the village and they had to chase them off and kill them. After that, your grandfather grows up and has kids, one of whom is going to be your father. Now, your father not only has never seen a dragon, but all the stories come from his grandfather. Your father grows up and has a child, who is you, and you ask your father if he has ever seen a dragon. He says no, and he has only heard stories from his crazy old grandfather, who is your great-grandfather. And like that, dragons are believed to be a myth. Nobody is alive anymore that can give a first-hand account of seeing a dragon. They become a thing of legend and lore. At this point, all the dragons are gone and there is no one left who can give a first-hand account. Everyone who could give a first-hand account is now dead. And just like your great-grandparents, you don't know anything about them. Then in 1824, the first dinosaur bones were found, and Satan uses dinosaurs for evil. Just like everything in God's creation, Satan makes a counterfeit. He twists and perverts it and uses it against the world. And let me show you how he does this. How will this child view the world after 12 or 16 years in the public school system in this town? This here is called an I Can Read book. It's meant to be a book for beginner readers. Now, what are the first 4 words in this? Yeah, it's always the same. Millions of years ago. Here's another one. Millions of years ago. They even got Dr. Seuss. From fossils, teeth, eggs, and bone got stuck in the muck, then the muck turned to stone. These fossils are old, they are dusty and worn because they were made long before you were born. Not hundreds of years, not thousands of years, but millions of years. Every time you see that phrase, millions of years, that's a euphemism for God's not real. That's a euphemism for you cannot trust your Bible. That is the same lie the serpent told Eve in the garden. Hath God said? Did God really say the earth is 6,000? Did God really say he made everything in 6 days? Did God really say? That's all it is. Doubt after doubt after doubt, you cannot trust your Bible. These kids have absolutely no chance of learning about God or getting saved in public schools. The teachers can't do it. When they grow up, they're not going to learn about God on the job or the TV or the radio. I mean, don't get me wrong, Christian radio exists, and you can still buy a Bible and other Christian literature here in America, but my point is that society, especially public education and state colleges, they are anti-Christian at best. That is why God commanded us to bring the message to the world. The responsibility falls on us. So I have to always ask myself, what am I living for? I have stood at the deathbed of Christ and not one of them said, I wish I put more time in at the office. Nobody says that. Every Christian I have been near, in the end, wishes they had more time with their family or wishes they did something for God. That is all I've ever heard. The devil never takes a day off. There's no vacation. He's just working away. So that is our lesson on dinosaurs in the Bible. I hope it was helpful, or at the very least, I hope it was entertaining. And I need to ask you just one more question before we go with a word of prayer. And that question is always the same. If you were to die today, are you 100% sure, without any doubt, that you would go to heaven when you die? There is no right or wrong answer to that. There is only an honest one. If you are not sure, please let me take the Bible and let me show you how you can know for sure that if you were to die today, heaven would be your home. You can know without any doubt. It only takes a few minutes. With that being said, for those of you that don't know me, my name is Patrick Hayes, and I would like to be a help in any way that I can. Please get in touch with us. Follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Bible Study on the Farm. We have dozens of videos up there. Also, you can email me at BibleStudyOnTheFarm@gmail.com. And with that, let's have a word of prayer and we'll be dismissed. God, thank you as always that we can just get together at a church and talk about the Bible. And you know what? Get into interesting and enjoyable topics like dinosaurs in the Bible.